I believed him because he wasn't talking just to be talking. I felt he was also coming straight because there was a big war behind that. A war that they lost. And I think it was a war that destroyed their neighborhood.
We've all heard whispers about that neon-lit Vegas night in 1996, the night Shakur's voice was snuffed out and the entire world wondered who was pulling the strings behind the crossfire. But now, after nearly 30 years of street talk and conspiracy podcasts, Suge Knight, once the West Coast's biggest, baddest music kingpin, has finally broken the code of silence. From behind concrete walls and barbed wire, Suge has all but pointed the finger at Diddy Combs, confirming what the most cynical in hip-hop have suspected for decades. Diddy allegedly ordered not only Shakur's demise, but Suge's as well. No more innuendo, no more plausible deniability. Suge Knight is on record. And for the first time, the forbidden theory at the heart of hip-hop's bloodiest feud is coming straight from the only living witness to the shooting.
He's saying that, Diddy, he put a hit out on you and Tupac, and that's the reason why Tupac got Vegas. So, yeah, man. How you feel about that?
Well, first thing first. I mean, that conversation been out there. He put his truth out there. A lot of other people put their truth out there.
They'll be like, we need to put ourselves there. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. It's past 11. Suge, not yet in his orange jumpsuit, is driving his black BMW east through the strip, a wall of death row muscle trailing behind him in a rolling shadow of 10 cars. Next to Suge, Shakur is decked out in a Versace shirt, all gold chains and electric bravado, music still thumping. One of his unreleased tracks, Night, later remembered. The adrenaline from the Knight's Tyson fight is still in the air. Only hours earlier, they'd both thrown fists in a casino brawl with Orlando Anderson, a Crip from the other side, nephew of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. But the war isn't over. It's about to spill onto the street. As they glide past the intersection of Flamingo and Koval, the lights from the strip turning everything hyper-real, a white Cadillac glides up beside them. There's DeAndre Big Dre Smith in the back, and according to both court filings and old-school informants, he leans out with a Glock and unleashes a hail of 13 rounds. 4 of those bullets rip through Shakur. Suge, grazed by shrapnel, is left bleeding but alive, the taste of copper and adrenaline clinging to the inside of his mouth. The BMW peels away on 2 blown tires. In less than 30 seconds, the future of hip-hop is rewritten in blood and engine smoke.
Well, Keefe D said he told Rat James that, look, it's big money in this. Only thing Puffy want to do is pay $1 million to have both of them. He told me that.
For nearly 3 decades, everyone in the music world tiptoed around that night, afraid to say out loud what everyone in Compton, in Brooklyn, in the record label boardrooms already whispered. Suge Knight's latest confession is more than just an aging mogul settling scores. It is the shattering of a taboo, the moment when the court of public opinion is handed its smoking gun. Knight has made it plain, everybody knows where the $1 million came from. And suddenly, Diddy's carefully constructed narrative is buckling under the weight of this bombshell. It is just old beef anymore. This is legal ammunition. Diddy, who once danced his way through every after-party and deposition, now sits inside a cell of his own, 4 years already stamped on his sentence, for what the judge called disgusting, shameful conduct. But with this new confirmation, the threat isn't just about public disgrace. Prosecutors are circling, and the prospect of a life sentence for orchestrating Shakur's demise isn't just a campfire story anymore. It's the plotline of a very real courtroom drama, playing out in broad daylight.
Yes, on your own platform. He said this on your platform that he put up $1 million to get Pac here.
Yeah, correct. He was around Puffy, and Puffy made a comment when they was around, yeah.
To really grasp how we ended up with a hip-hop Don Corleone allegedly commissioning hits on rivals, we have to rewind to the rise of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. Before bullets were flying, it was ego, paranoia, and power jostling for dominance. The world remembers the Source Awards of 1995, when Suge Knight, not a man given to subtlety, stood before the whole industry and sent a shot across the bow. Any artists out there that want to be an artist and stay a star, and don't have to worry about the executive producer all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to death row. It was a taunt with teeth, a public slap at Diddy, who made himself the face, the hype man, and the business brain of Bad Boy Records. Even hardened label execs squirmed in their seats. For the first time, the tension between Knight and Combs wasn't just subtext, it was headline news, and everyone knew the line had been crossed.
He said it was, according to him now, According to him, he said it was security that accepted money, participated in it, and it was so-called homies.
The war only escalated. Shakur, newly signed to death row and freshly out of prison, unleashed Hit 'Em Up in June 1996. This was no mere diss track, it was a declaration of open warfare. Shakur didn't just insult Biggie and Bad Boy Records. He called out Diddy by name, boasting about affairs with rivals' wives and vowing, in raw terms, to make their lives miserable. It was brash, brutal, and personal. Prosecutors now say this wasn't just lyrical jousting, it was real-world motive. In court filings, Keefe himself claimed Diddy was terrified of Suge Knight and desperate enough to put out $1 million bounty to erase both Suge and Shakur. It wasn't just about chart positions or magazine covers. The tension had metastasized into something darker, a world where music industry beef turned into literal contracts. Industry veterans insist the paranoia inside Bad Boy Records was so thick you could cut it with a platinum record. Diddy, always the businessman first, knew the West Coast wasn't playing by the rules of showbiz. Behind closed doors, old associates claim Diddy paced his office at night, talking about how Suge was a threat not just to his artists but to his empire. Multiple sources, including former law enforcement and gang insiders, point to clandestine meetings like the infamous Delhi Summit on Sunset Boulevard, where Combs and Keefe allegedly discussed handling the problem. The sum? $1 million, the same figure that surfaces again and again in police interviews, court transcripts, and Keefe's own memoir. He was real scared of the guy, Keefe told detectives. It'd help in front of everybody.
Yeah, he was scared. Yes, I agree. I do agree that he was probably terrified for his life. So if that is the case, it's also quite feasible that he put up money to get Pac. You know what I mean?
By the time September 7 arrived, the rivalry had become a ticking bomb. The night of the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand, Shakur and Suge, trailed by a sea of bloods, spotted Orlando Anderson near the elevators. For anyone following the gangland chessboard, this was no random collision. Anderson was the nephew of Keefe, the same man Diddy allegedly paid for the hit. What happened next was caught on a grainy casino camera. Shakur, Suge, and Trevon Lane delivered a rapid-fire beatdown to Anderson. A shoulder dislocated, faces bloodied, and, with the benefit of hindsight, the fuse was lit. Multiple investigators have since called this the green light moment. No more warnings, no more threats. Retaliation was not just possible, it was inevitable.
And good thing he didn't, because even though we was friends, but if a paid you, I got a bullet into my skull. And one of the best friends I had ever had in life is Pac.
Even as the death row convoy left the MGM and rolled toward Flamingo and Koval, the sense of doom was almost cinematic. We know now that the Cadillac wasn't just following, it was hunting. According to police interviews and Keefe's own book, he handed the Glock to the backseat and the fireworks started. If Shakur hadn't leaned out the window to flirt with fans, would the shooters have missed him? If they would have drove on my side, I would have popped them, Keefe told the LA detectives, his confession matter-of-fact and chilling. For a city famous for its cameras and cops, Las Vegas failed to deliver even a single conviction. Nearly 30 years have gone by, and still, the intersection is remembered not for bright lights and jackpots, but as the scene where justice went on a decades-long vacation. From his prison cell, Suge Knight still relives those moments, his voice cracking with both anger and loss. Part of me faded when he passed, he said. Yet he's finally spelling out what everyone's been too scared to admit. The $1 million, the setup, the cover-up. It was all there just waiting for someone to break the omerta. Everybody knows where the $1 million came from. The message is clear, and with Diddy's past finally colliding head-on with his present downfall, the question now is whether this decades-old secret will finally bring the last man standing to face the consequences, or if the music industry's dirtiest war is about to claim yet another chapter.
I lost. I lost my freedom behind Tupac died. I lost business. I lost house, a whole lot of shit.
So here we are, decades removed from the blinding lights of the Strip and the relentless pulse of hip-hop's golden age, looking at a version of Sean Diddy Combs no one in '96 could have pictured. Not the untouchable mogul swanning through exclusive penthouses and packed awards shows, but a grayer, shrunken figure at the defense table, wiping away tears in a Manhattan courtroom. July 2025, the judge's gavel drops and Diddy gets 4 years and change for flying people across state lines for wild parties that prosecutors painted as sick and shameful. The details tumble out, the $500,000 fine, the courtroom sketches, the kids and family in the gallery, And Combs himself, no longer the master of ceremonies, now just another inmate headed for a cell. We're told he broke down, calling his own behavior disgusting, shameful, sick, apologizing not just to his mother, but to Cassie Ventura and other accusers. The judge doesn't flinch. A history of good works can't wash away the record in this case, he declares. The old Diddy charm, worth nothing in this new world.
Sean had to take responsibility for what he did as an individual. Sean is the one who pulled that gun out. Sean is the one who shot. So he has to take responsibility for that.
It's a jarring contrast, the luxury and platinum era replaced by mugshots, raids, and a parade of headlines that read like a Hollywood fever dream. But the true strangeness of this saga only deepens when we look at what happened in the hours and days after Shakur's passing. With the world still reeling and conspiracy theories already bubbling, Suge Knight describes a scene that belongs in a fever dream, not a funeral home. Of night Shakur, Shakur's mother, and a figure every bit as formidable as the men who surrounded her son, reportedly demanded that her boy be cremated on the spot. No drawn-out goodbyes, no waiting for an industry parade. Knight, stunned but obedient, paid out $1 million in cash to ensure her wishes were carried out that same night. In the chaos of a hospital filled with press and police, the normal rituals of grief dissolved, replaced by decisions made at breakneck speed by the only people left with real power, Knight and Afeni, each trying to control how the world would remember the fallen star. As the night stretched on, the line between tribute and myth-making blurred even further. Instead of a quiet memorial, a handful of Shakur's closest friends and confidants gathered for a ritual that would become urban legend. Some of his ashes, rolled up with the blunt, passed around as a final, surreal farewell. Whether you believe every detail or not, the power of that image is undeniable. It's the stuff that cements Shakur's legend as much as his platinum records or poetic bar. The story plays out like a twisted Greek tragedy, one in which the cast of characters can't quite separate mourning from performance. And every act of loyalty is shadowed by the chaos that put Shakur in that hospital bed to begin with. Knight himself, bleeding and battered, claimed to have sat out the ritual for fear of violating probation. A detail that only adds to the sense of lawlessness and moral confusion hanging over those first days.
It's so complicated, convoluted, chaotic. It's hard to actually figure out what's what, but it's becoming clearer.
This is what Diddy's alleged plot set in motion. Not just the end of a rival, but a ripple effect of bizarre, almost cinematic scenes that still haunt the culture decades later. The sheer speed and strangeness of Shakur's send-off magnifies what's really at stake. A young man gone at 25, a mother forced to decide how history would remember him, and powerful men shaping the public narrative before the ashes were even cold. Now, as the legal reckoning circles back to the ones who may have set it all in motion, we're left to wonder whether the truth will finally be dragged into the light, or whether the legend, smoke and all, will always be bigger than the fact. The feds did just swoop in quietly. Back in March 2024, they raided his LA mansions, making off with AR-15s, what they called illegal substances, and a truly jaw-dropping cache, 1,000 bottles of lube, allegedly for freak-off parties that insiders say would have made even the Wolf of Wall Street blush. Helicopters over Beverly Hills, neighbors peeking through curtains. The media camped outside, feeding on every detail. Was this the night Diddy finally ran out of luck? The prosecutors thought so. The judge saw a man who'd used his power and resources to keep it going. And if that was the end of the story, Combs would just serve his time, then walk free, reputation in ruins, but still breathing outside air. But this isn't the end. Not by a long shot.
Named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac's murder.
Because while Diddy faces the fallout from his own self-inflicted scandal, another fuse is burning, one that leads right back to the Vegas intersection where Shakur's life ended. Keefe D, the only living suspect from the white Cadillac, sits in his own cell, awaiting a high-stakes trial in 2026. His name is all over the new filings, and if you follow the paper trail from the 2009 secret police interviews to the thick court records in 2024, one name repeats again and again: Sean Diddy Combs. 70 times in one set of documents, another 77 in the next. In the transcripts, Keefe D claims Combs wasn't just venting after hit him up. He was allegedly terrified, desperate to be rid of Suge and Shakur, and willing to hand over millions to make the nightmare go away. According to Keefe D, the connection was explicit. He describes meetings, phone calls, even a conversation after the shooting where Combs allegedly asked, "Is that us?" The chilling implication: Combs needed to know if the hit he'd supposedly commissioned had been carried out. When pressed, Keefe D says that after everything went down, he tried to collect, only to find out the payout was tangled in a web of middlemen, the money allegedly funneled through a bad boy associate named Zip. The stories are maddeningly consistent. Police transcripts, old memoirs, now grand jury testimony. Even the DEA reports cite $1 million bounty, a running theme in the allegations that's as hard to shake as the beat of a classic bad boy track. For every denial Combs and his lawyers have issued, and there have been plenty, there's another sworn statement, another quote, another court filing turning up the heat.
I mean, that's Puffy's homie. You know what I mean? They have a relationship. They're friendly. They know each other.
The industry, though, has become a graveyard of silence. Suge Knight, never shy about calling it like he sees it, insists that bad boy royalty, Mary J. Blige, Mace, Faith Evans, have all kept their mouths shut, not because of street fear, but because of what he calls the people in the suites. It's not about getting jumped in a dark alley. It's about blackballing, banishing contracts, the unseen machinery of an industry that protected its biggest moneymakers at all costs. We're not just talking about people scared of Diddy as a person, but Diddy as a brand, as the man who could shut down a career with a phone call or a whispered word to a boardroom full of suits. But as Suge's confirmation echoes out, and as federal prosecutors start piecing together their chessboard, that wall of silence looks shakier than ever. The gossip isn't just idle speculation anymore. It's a legal threat with teeth. If charges are added for what happened on Flamingo and Koval, the math changes completely. This is no longer the story of a star fallen from grace. It's the story of whether the most powerful man in hip-hop will spend the rest of his life behind bars for what went down on a Las Vegas night almost 3 decades ago. Right now, Diddy's team is fighting to keep the walls from closing in, but the pressure isn't letting up. With Keefe D's trial delayed until 2026, and with every new leak bringing another layer of evidence, the sense is that the past isn't going to stay buried. Law enforcement veterans openly wonder if Keefe D will flip again to save himself, or if some other old-school player decides that the code of silence is worth less than a shot at freedom. For every insider willing to talk, there's another biting their tongue, waiting to see if this is really the moment hip-hop's oldest cold case finally hits boiling point.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he had to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70, that's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
So, as Diddy sits in his cell, 3 years left, if nothing changes, the million-dollar question is about to get real. Does the world watch him walk free in a few years, his empire shattered but his freedom intact? Or do prosecutors, armed with years of files and a fresh wave of confessions, bring the biggest charges of all, making Diddy's current sentence look like a warm-up lap for a life in prison blues? We know what Suge Knight thinks. We know what Keefe D has been saying. For money, for leverage, for legacy. But what about the rest? What about the truth hiding under decades of denials and half-buried evidence? And here's where we throw it to you, because if hip-hop's ultimate scandal finally lands in court, what happens next? Is Diddy just a casualty of his own appetites? Or does the story end with the world's most famous mogul facing justice for the crime that changed music forever? Drop your take in the comments, because this case is still wide open, and trust us, you won't want to miss where this saga heads next. Until then, stay bold, stay curious, and keep your eyes on the headlines. This is one story that's just getting started.